So we could see that Antenna's left eye is not converging properly. Now, because we position our body according to what we see, Antenna will have a postural imbalance. In this case, a lower shoulder. Let me show you. Please look straight ahead and try to relax. Here we go. Just relax. So we could see that Antenna's right arm is longer. So I'm now going to proceed on stimulating, I should say optimizing, the sensory input going in Antenna's brain by doing simple eye exercises. The first step is simply to draw a line on her index finger, right over here. So we have it right here. And then I'm going to proceed on doing clockwise circles. So Antenna, I'm going to ask you to look straight ahead, and let me just guide you like this. Give me your finger, and I want you to focus on the line. You have it? So let your eyes move. All right, so what I'm doing now is simple clockwise exercises. Clockwise for Antenna, anti-clockwise for the audience. I'm going in and out, and I'm simply forcing her eyes to work together. Beautiful. Are you okay? Very good. All good? Is your pain still 5 out of 10? 3, 4. So there's a bit of an improvement. Let's see how her eyes are moving. So we'll do the same test as we did before, so if you can look straight ahead. And please look at the tip of the pen. And we could see that there's a slight improvement. So if her eyes are moving better, then her posture will also improve. Let's look at your shoulders.
So, hello, Annette Verpillot from Montreal, bilingual Canada. And I saw your video on YouTube, and I'll put a link in the bio, because what I saw there, I have years of practice in massage therapy, and I'm finally able to help people. And now I saw I only need a pen and to look people in the eye. What are you doing, Annette?
What am I doing? Hopefully I'm helping as many people as I can. No, it's funny. I started off as a rehab specialist in 2006. Like most therapists, I had a lot of clients that have had pain, chronic pain, dizziness, problems with chronic sciatica or whatnot, and I was taught that these interventions that to be done in my clinic were mainly towards managing their symptoms and mostly looking at their body locally meaning that when someone had lower back pain, for example, I was taught to look at that specific area. I quickly came to realize that working in a local perspective, meaning on the area that was painful, did not allow me to treat the body globally. And one thing led to another, and looking at the way that most therapies are geared in today's day and age, they are, needless to say, the results that I would get at the time were great, but the problem was that they were mostly temporary. And from that perspective, well, not to say that my clients were not happy, but as a client or as anyone listening who has pain, I think that you would agree that if we can resolve the problem as quickly as possible, and hopefully as it make it permanent, we can help people save a lot of time. And that's really what drove me into looking a little bit more about how this entire system functions, and that entire system being the muscles, and what controls the muscles and the position of our joints is ultimately our brain. So went back, spoke to my teachers, spoke about it to my colleagues, and found out that in nowhere, in no sphere, was anybody even talking about the brain in the context of rehabilitation. I said to myself, well, how could this be if the brain is the master computer? The best example that I could give, because when I talk to people, I still see some of them in doubt, they kind of scratch their head and they're looking at me not understanding what I'm saying, is when someone has a stroke, right? It's very easy for us to understand that one side of the body becomes paralyzed more or less. Well, that's because the brain controls our muscles.
Yeah.
So the event of giving the example of the stroke might be a little bit extreme, but that's really what we see. Those imbalances that we see with our posture are the expression of the way that our brain is projecting onto our muscles. So when we have chronic pain, aside from any traumatic event, as a therapist, certainly I wanted to ask myself, what's going on with the brain? What's going on there that's creating what I'm seeing in my clinic? But most importantly, what can I do to deliver really, really quick results, but most importantly, long-lasting results? And that's how I came across, to make a long story short, how I put this knowledge together of neuroscience with rehabilitation and biomechanics and created what we call today the Posture Pro method.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing. Yeah. I tell people in my class that that the eyes always level with the horizon, no matter what, how imbalanced or out of balance the body is. So already myself thought about the connection between the body and the eyes, but you take it a couple of levels further. How would you describe your method? I mean, you probably told this already thousands of times, but for our listeners, it's totally new.
Right. Well, in our clinic, what we do is that we focus first and foremost in understanding and looking at how the brain develops to begin with. Because what we tend to forget is, and I'll explain that a little bit, is that, and I always give this example: how long does it take an animal to walk in comparison to a human? It takes approximately 12 months for a human, whereas in most mammals, it can take up to 5 minutes. And the main difference is in the brain networks. So to keep this really simple for the ones that are listening to us, for us, it's really about looking how that brain developed and the functions of that brain, or I should say the dysfunctions of the brain. Not to say that there is anything wrong with their brain, but what we're going to see is mostly a disconnection, is a part of the brain that is not stimulated enough with specific movement patterns that are not properly integrated in the early stages of life. So we're going to look at motor skill development, sensory activation, and we're going to work with specific exercises and tools in order to address every single individual's need is different, but we want to address those needs specific to that individual and use those tools to foster that connectivity between the right brain and the left brain, which is ultimately what we see in our practice when we have someone that is misaligned. This is the expression of the misalignment that is coming from the brain. So looking at that connectivity gives us really a clear indication of how we need to work on the brain to have an effect on the body, and then ultimately making these links to help everyone or anyone that comes to see us to live out their lives as best as they can, and have a healthy living.
Yeah, but what I saw in your video, and I'll put a link in the bio, is that people were out of sync, imbalanced, and then you did something with their eyes. Because the eyes were also out of balance, and I think you made the eyes balanced again, and then the body was also immediately balanced. Is that what I saw?
Yeah, that is what you saw, and this was a fantastic experience for me, because I really did insist on doing this live and picking someone randomly out of the audience. The idea is that the way that we look at our rehabilitation system is that it's separated into different pieces. You have the eye specialist, the teeth specialist, the muscle specialist, as you know, your massage therapist, the foot specialist, the surgeon. And the problem is when someone has lower back pain, which was the example of the TED Talk. And the reason I feel that what I was doing was providing temporary results, but I saw that as a failure to fix the problem, and certainly not having any answers to do so. And the reason that I feel that I was failing is because when we look at this system is multifactorial, but we are taught to look at it in a local perspective. So when I say multifactorial, it means that the way that your eyes move, the way that you stand on your feet, the position of your jaw, yes, the position of your jaw, your lower jaw, affects the way that you stand. And the way that the muscles respond in that context is that the brain is constantly scanning. We're not aware of this. This is part of our survival, but the brain is kind of constantly scanning, where your body is in the environment. So if you have improper input going into your brain, then the output is going to be uneven. So the expression of that, what we see in clinic, is someone who has, for example, a lower shoulder or a lower hip. So the TED Talk allowed me to show one of those sensory entries, which was the eyes, to show a link and a correlation between how your eyes move and the imbalances, for example, in your shoulder. But these imbalances really exist in the three planes of space, and we take it much, much further in our clinic and in the programs that we teach to healthcare practitioners, in the sense that that's just one side of the spectrum. We can go so much further as far as the results that we're looking to achieve. But the demonstration of showing how the eyes are able to correct this misalignment really was the goal of doing the TED Talk.
Wow, fascinating. Because in my clinic, 99% of the clients are misaligned. So there's a lot of work to do for you.
Well, you know what I say is 90% of the world's population, 90% of 8 billion people on Earth are misaligned. And if we look at the statistics of how much in North America are spending as far as managing their pain, we're talking about over 560 billion a year. And that's for pain management. So I think that we do as best as we can with the tools that we have, but I really fundamentally think that it's time that we, when I say it's time, I'm talking about, the sphere of rehabilitation, that we start to get on board and start looking at the master computer, which is, how did that brain develop? How did this individual learn how to walk? Because that's important. That's going to give us an indication as far as how stable they are in their environment. Is there an imbalance with their feet? Because it has to start from the bottom up, not the other way around. And we have to stop looking at problems locally, because generally, and most of the time, the problems locally, because the problem is global. So if it's a multifactorial problem, and I'm just addressing one part of the problem, then the results that I'm going to deliver to you in my clinic will be limited. They will work, you will feel better for a certain period of time. And quite frankly, I find that is very unjust for someone whose time is extremely valuable. We all work hard for our money. And I believe that if there's a way to deliver those results in a quicker way, more efficient way, then I think certainly, and in what we're living now in this day and age, now is the time more than ever.
Yeah. And your results, do you have like a test that prove that these are long-lasting results with your method?
Well, yes, we do, because we actually use 2 neurological tests in our clinic to quantify that. We even take it a step further by quantifying our results with a force plate. A force plate is a scientific platform that separates the weight-bearing surfaces on both of your feet, individual separation, forefoot and and rear foot separation, and we're actually able to have very precise numbers that show us what's going on as far as an individual's stability. So we can tell if there's a vestibular problem, if it's a visual problem, if it's a proprioceptive problems with these different graphs and peaks that we're able to read through the computer. But without making it so fancy, we can also have a very visual images with pictures that we take before and after. Certainly with the pain level that the clients are experiencing, with movement, testimonials from parents with their kids. We work with kids, we work with athletes, weekend warriors, with the elderly. That's absolutely, really, my youngest is 6 years old, my oldest is 104, and everything in between. And as long as we're working with a healthy nervous system, and we've even worked with Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's and different types of neurological disorders, which of course then the results are limited in how much we can provide. But as long as you're working with someone that has a nervous system, you can create changes in the brain, because as we know, neuroplasticity is something that exists, that it's real, and that is officially now recognized by the, it's been recognized now for a while by the, by doctors. Yeah. So neuroplasticity is simply building new networks in the brain. So the question, and the thing that we think of is if someone's walking like this, right, for a certain period of time, then they were not born this way. They've adapted to this type of posture. And what I'm doing now is a type of a flexed posture. But if you learned your way into bad posture, you can certainly learn your way out of it. But to do that, you need to start changing. You have to change the way that the brain is processing all of this input and the way that it's projecting onto your muscles. And that's where we come in.
Wow. Hey, and so many questions. First one, how does it work on blind people?
So blind people, we've worked with blind. It's funny you mentioned that. I haven't had too many, but I've worked with three or four cases of blind people. The thing you have to remember is as long as their eye muscles are still intact, meaning attached to their eyeball, we can ask them to imagine looking to the left, looking to the right, making circles with their eyes. The results will be limited in comparison to someone who's 23 years old and who's fit, right? But we can still provide really, really interesting, or at least alleviate the pain. Because everyone who comes to see me have pain, right? Rare are the ones that will come to see you for just prevention. Mm-hmm. Yep. That's maybe 1 or 2% that will come in. So if they're coming to see me for pain, then there's already something that's off with them. But as far as blind people, results will be limited, but you can still, as long as those eye muscles are intact, you can still help with the pain. And don't forget that the eyes, affect 100% of the brain. So these cranial nerves, these muscles are connected in your primitive brain. And when you start to work them out, just like working out your body, you're really activating your entire brain. That's really what it's all about. Yeah. And that's literally what I showed in the TED Talk. But again, as far as postural alignment.
But so the eyes are way more important than we maybe even had imagined before. I remember I read something about that when kids do stuff for the first time, their eye movement is much more going all places. And after they did it a couple of times, they need to look at it less. They can do it more and more without looking, for instance. Well,
it's good that you mentioned that, because I was just going to say there's different stages of development with children. So for example, when a baby is born, they have no control over, they're unable to actually follow a target with their eyes. And that's normal, because that displays an immaturity of the networks in the brain that control, in this example, vision. Children don't have binocular vision at birth. This is something that is acquired through time, more specific through movement. And that's exactly what we start to break down with our method, because it's about going back in time and figuring out at which point did the systems, did this communication start to become less effective, right? And the less effective it is, if it's stronger on one side in comparison to the other, what you will see is an imbalance in the body, but you will also see different types of skills, unevenness of certain skills with children and even with adults, and even with facial alignment. So that's really the extent of it. But yes, absolutely. The eyes, we trust, vision trumps all other senses, in the sense that we will trust what we see more than anything else.
Yeah.
So it's going to be extremely important for our eyes to track a specific target, whether it be in pursuit, whether it be in saccades, far and close, or whether it be in binocular vision, which is depth perception. If any one of these systems are impaired, it's going to have an effect on the way that we perceive the world, on the way that we perceive ourselves in the world. But because vision affects every single part of your brain that is meant to do specific things, it's also going to affect everything else. You can't really just say it's just going to affect that. You can't, right? You can't just, it's not a local thing, it's a global thing.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking now, I can also imagine for athletes, for football players or baseballs, maybe it can improve their proprioception, and maybe it can improve their throwing or their kicking or something, make it more accurate.
Well, not maybe, for sure. And this we've quantified with strength coaches, elite coaches. We know that when an athlete is more stable or has a better time, a better sense of where their hand is in space. And when I'm talking to you now, I could see in my peripheral vision, and in my peripheral vision is what athletes use as far as their reaction time. So if my eyes are not tracking properly in my central vision, as I'm looking at you here, if my eye movements are not the same from my left eye to my right eye, then my peripheral vision will be affected as well. And that's what athletes use when it's time to make a decision to move. When they plan to make that decision, which is a motor plan that is in the brain, there's a cascade of event that happens that coordinates proper coordination between your flexors and your extensors. And bottom line, you need to be stable to move. Yeah. And when we talk about stability, it has many meanings for me, in the sense that stability, right, when someone's unstable, they feel stressed and they might not even know it. Right? So we need to feel secure. And if we're unstable, well, we don't feel secure. You see that a lot in old people. They're afraid to walk, they're afraid to fall, they're afraid of this, because their nervous system is starting to fail them. Yeah. So, I see this as a means of adopting a healthy lifestyle. We all are aware of the effects of stress on the body. We're all aware of the effects of eating poorly on the body. Obviously, science is continuously changing, but, I'd like to add an additional component to that and simply say that, there's another sphere that we have to look at, is what about our posture? If our posture is misaligned and we're doing all of these things, there's still one component that has not been addressed. So, I see this really as a prevention tool, but also as a health tool to help us age as best as we can.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Yeah, it's for everybody, of course. Hey, and how is the TMJ involved in this?
Yeah, so the jaw is going to have, is really multifactorial as well. There's a few components that are linked to the jaw. Again, very quickly and in simplified terms, your lower jaw, which is called your mandible, is attached to your cranium through muscles. And the position of your joint is, that specific position in your temporomandibular joint is dictated by the height of your teeth. So whenever you open and close your mouth, you have a movement of your temporomandibular joint. But if you happen to have dysfunctions in your mouth, like missing teeth, like improper swallowing techniques, like mouth breathing, which will also affect the sinuses and the position of your head, well, where that comes into play is that, and from my perspective, is if my jaw is misaligned, and if I breathe through my mouth, for example, which is 80% of the people, last I checked, then my head is going to tend to move forward to open my airway. Yeah. And then I end up with either a forward head posture, which will then bring in my shoulders and change my center, or I should say challenge my center of gravity. So, but again, it goes back to the early stages of life. When we're born, we don't have teeth. We swallow with our tongue. Breastfeeding is extremely important in developing the lower jaw, which will then grow out so that it could be under or inside the upper teeth. And this entire mechanism and this entire system happens simultaneously with nasal breathing, with chewing, with swallowing. And when we see an impairment in that system, we see what we see nowadays, which is basically all kids going through orthodontics. We see kids that have crooked teeth. But from a postural perspective, which is my job, you see postural imbalances and forward displacements.
Hey, and
so in a nutshell, yeah.
Yeah, please.
I was just going to say, in a nutshell, this is how the jaw can affect posture.
Wow, amazing. I never thought that the jaw also had such an important job. Amazing.
Yes, everything is important.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I was also thinking about what I saw. I was thinking about EMDR, which is something totally different. But do you know about EMDR?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any relation to EMDR, because they also work with the eyes?
Well, there is, because when you're doing the eye movements and you're getting into what happens is, when you live a trauma, there are certain parts of your brain that shut down in order to help you cope with that stress. And one of the parts of the brain that will shut down is the prefrontal cortex, right? Which is the part that makes us human. And your limbic system kind of kicks in. Now, your right brain and your left brain have very different functions. The right brain having the function of remembering the general memory. Oh yeah, I remember going to that restaurant at some point. And the left brain having the more detailed memory, remembering all of the details of that evening. So what ends up happening with trauma is that one side of the brain will retain the emotion. That emotion, you will not be able to reason with your frontal lobe because there's a disconnect. And then you may end up having symptoms or signs of anxiety that are, I don't want to say uncontrollable, in some cases they can be, but are unexplainable. So when we start moving the eyes and going into that frontal lobe, let's remember and think back about what happened, then we're able to connect both hemispheres together. And hopefully the idea behind these treatments and this method is to be able to integrate what's happened and accept it so that it could move on and we can no longer have the anxiety. A very, very powerful technique when you incorporate it. Works actually beautifully, but from a postural, it's being used as a therapeutic tool for anxiety, but from a postural perspective, I've yet to see it correct postural imbalances. I think that this is a great tool to have for traumatic events, to help you remember, definitely an add-on to what we do. But remember that if someone's posture is misaligned, they are, in a way, without really realizing it, in a constant state of stress. And remember that anxiety globally lives in the vestibular system. If you are unstable, then there's different degrees of this, you are anxious.
Yeah.
So we may resolve one issue with emotions, but there may be another underlying issue. So, my goal is always, let's address as much as we can globally, and then, deal with whatever is left.
Yeah. That's why I'm thinking about it. I mean, your sense of well-being or your traumas also have an effect on your posture. So I can imagine that if you change the posture, that also maybe emotions come up or something.
But it doesn't even have to be traumatic. If you think back, if you yourself, or for whoever's listening, if you think back to the furthest memory and emotion that you can remember at the beginning of your life, right? There are 5 emotions that dictate who we are today. And the first one that we've all felt, probably in a specific order, is abandonment, when our parents brought us to kindergarten. And, it's very clear in neurology, the limbic system runs around or turns around the motor system. So our emotions do have an effect on our posture. And even the way that our muscular and our body and our muscles develop up to a certain extent. So I think that working with a system that considers all of those factors together is extremely important. If you want to talk really about a multi-pluri disciplinary approach, there should be in there for sure should be something that incorporates emotions as well. I think again that is a great add-on to what we do. Absolutely.
Who you teach people this? What kind of people come to you? Who are your students?
From every single field, I've had chiropractors, doctors, surgeons, orthopedic surgeons, regular people, Pilates, yoga, parents, accountants, trainers, more recently trainers and coaches. Everyone at some point either comes into our program to help themselves, to help their family, or to incorporate this in their business. What we teach and the method that we teach is simply, and this is the 150th version of what we're delivering, because teaching neurology in simple terms really is quite a challenge. But certainly teaching it in a way that is immediately applicable in your practice or even at home was a great challenge as well. So we teach this in a step-by-step method where it's easily digestible, easy to incorporate in whatever field it is that you work in, or even as a tool to just have a healthy lifestyle. And anyone really, there's no prerequisites, as long as you have the motivation to help others, help yourself, help your family, and just a bit of a curiosity about how this entire system works, then you would benefit from our programs. Because of COVID, usually we travel across the world. We've recently hosted the Posture Pro Method, was it February 22nd. It was a huge success. I was a little bit nervous because I didn't know how well we can actually perform all of these exercises on Zoom, but it turned out to be one of the best courses that we've ever had, and the feedback was absolutely phenomenal. So we're offering it again on April 22nd, and I'm very, very excited about that.
Okay, and that's a Zoom class, and we can also follow it from Holland.
Yes, absolutely. It's a Zoom class. It's 2 days from the times, and the schedule is written online. And it's a 2-day class in which gives you also access to, because we go to Europe quite often in a year's span. So if you do take the Zoom class, you will also have complimentary access to our in-person class when we are in Europe, which realistically I'm thinking will be closer probably till the end of this upcoming summer, or if not this fall. So yes, for now it will be on Zoom.
Wow, great. Well, let me know when you come to Europe, because we would love to learn more from this. I don't think there's anything in like this in Holland. I think you're the first. You developed it yourself, right?
Well, yes, it's a combination. Listen, I didn't make up neurology, but I've taken information that's already out there and just put it into a system to be easily applicable by absolutely anyone. And this method really strives to, I like to say, rewire your brain, because there really is neuroplasticity. We're simply changing habits that you've acquired over time. And what people have to start realizing is when they have pain, again, very often it is a multifactorial system. The therapists that you're going to go see will give you results, as long as you know that those results will be temporary. And if you're seeking to find a more permanent solution, something that really does address the cause of the problem rather than managing symptoms, then you may want to take a look into the Posture Pro Method.
Yeah. Okay, great. I probably have 1,000 questions after we hang up, but I'm totally blown away right now.
Well, listen, I'm so happy that I have this opportunity to share this knowledge. My passion really is to help as many people as possible. I find that there's a certain sense of injustice with people not even knowing that this exists. And at the end of the day, from the feedback that I get from my clients, it could be really frustrating, because some of them will come in the office and say, the doctor said everything is fine with me, there's nothing wrong with me, and some have expressed that even at home it's starting to create problem, because the husband will say, well, what's wrong with you? You don't want to, the doctor says you're fine, but you keep on having these problems. So So, really, if there's a way to just get that message out there and have people see the difference, and even by looking at the TED Talk, if they try it themselves, if you have pain, wherever you have pain, just try doing some eye exercises before and after and see if that makes a difference for you. And if it does, that's your nervous system in action. And then it's just going to be a question of keeping those results, sustaining them for a long period of time so that you can start regressing back to a more physiological, perfectly aligned posture. And we see great improvements in many things when that happens. So.
Wow, fantastic. I read a book once from Mabel Todd from the 30s, and she said 80% of our injuries, our complaints, our pains, come from the fact that we started living with 2 feet, with our hands not on the ground. So we moved from quadrupeds to bipeds. How you say that?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's about fighting gravity, and that's exactly what we measure on the force plate. When we're standing up like this, when I'm standing like this, and not moving, to your eyes, I may appear that I'm not moving, but if you have a platform that's recording your movement, you're actually doing circles like this. Now, the greater the circle, the more movement within that circle, the more energy you are spending standing upright. There's what's that system that's going on. So that's the energy system. But then you have, the joint system. Every single joint is carved in such a way that it needs to move in that fashion. And if in between the joints you have these cartilage, and if there's excessive wear and tear, then the end results that you and I see in our clinic is pain.
Yeah.
So anything that ends with is, arthritis, is inflammation, is really is the joint that is degenerating. So yeah, and there's many studies out there, even chiropractic studies, that talk about just in one single manipulation, their goal is to realign the spine, the segments of the spine. And there are so many studies that come to collaborate that with one spinal alignment, I don't know how many thousands, hundreds of thousands biofeedbacks are going to the brain simply because that segment is now aligned on top of the other. But what if there was a way to do that, without really going through something that could be aggressive for some, which is an actual adjustment, but most importantly, to do that every single day, all day long.
Yeah.
And have your spine fully activated. So yeah, that's really what it's all about, I think.
Wow, great. Well, I always have a question for my guests. The final question is, because you also are a therapist, what makes a good therapist?
Someone who stays open-minded. We once believed the earth was flat, right? Some fall into their egos of profession. They don't like to get out of what they know and what they think they know. So certainly, I think that if you become a therapist, you must have a certain interest or passion in helping people, and try to remember that. The best thing is to remember that, because what we do and what we know is to the benefit of our clients and our patients. It's not about ourselves. I don't think that it represents who we are, but certainly if we have the possibility to help someone and change their lives, then I find that is a big responsibility anyways, that I take very seriously. And and I think that open-mindedness is something that's very important in the therapeutic world.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, I mean, we are 1,000 miles away, but I can feel your passion about this topic. So that's amazing. I want to thank you very much.
Thank you.